How many new villains for Spider-Man 3 or DLC did Spider-Man 2 the video game set up? Where can we find them in Spider-Man 2's story, and what does it mean for the future? The recent release of Insomniac's Spider-Man 2 has been widely praised by the gaming community as a worthy successor to the original 2018 game. While the Sinister Six, Dr. Otto Octavius, and the likes of Mr. Negative led the first entry, and Venom, Sandman, Kraven, and more leading the second one, there are still a ton of Spider-Man's rogues that are unused in the Insomniac franchise. In fact, several have been primed for arrivals in either the third entry or DLC content. Let's begin with the series of the Flame side quests, which all ends up leading to one of the most violent and unhinged criminals in Spider-Man's rogues gallery. In the game, Spider-Man teams up with Detective Yuri Watanabe, now nightlighting as the vigilante known as Wraith. The two of them attempt to track down an enigmatic cult leader of an organization known as the Flame. After completing the Amends mission, Peter gets the prompt to begin the series of quests. Over the course of several side quests though, Peter will eventually come face to face with the cult's charismatic, albeit mentally unstable leader, Cletus Cassidy. Cassidy, of course, is perhaps best well known for his bond with the Carnage symbiote. And although he has yet to bond with the symbiote as of the game's finale, his dual identity is set up for a future installment or DLC. But exactly how does this version of Cletus Cassidy vary from many of the other versions that you might be familiar with? This iteration not only shows a complete lack of remorse or concern, but also incredible charisma. Normally, Cassidy is a sadistic serial killer who has no concern for the sanctity of life, but this depiction also shows him as a charismatic leader. He has charm to amass a following, which is unique from his mainline comic counterpart. On the final Flame mission, his goal is to ambush an Oscorp transport van to steal a sample of the symbiote, eventually making off with a red-tinted variant that we can only assume to be Carnage. Once Cassidy and the symbiote merge, Insomniac might see the debut of Carnage in either a future DLC or in Spider-Man 3. In the comics, Cassidy is a mentally unstable individual with deranged psychopathic tendencies, and this was all without the influence of the symbiote known as the Clintar. Following his bond with the symbiote, however, his fundamental disregard for human life now had the firepower to become far more dangerous. Before eventually bonding with the offspring of the Venom symbiote, Cassidy was imprisoned and was in the midst of serving 11 consecutive life sentences for his various murders. What makes his bond with the symbiote unique from Venom, however, is that Cassidy and the symbiote are no longer separate identities. Cassidy bonded with the symbiote after it inflicted a bloody cut on his hand and melded itself straight into his bloodstream. This is important because now it does not attach like a regular suit, but is literally a part of him. This makes the two inseparable, while someone like Peter, Brock, or Flash Thompson can get rid of the Venom symbiote with fire or loud sounds. While Carnage is certainly terrifying, he is not the only villain that's been alluded to, so let's talk about some of the other enemies that the game is setting up for the future. Perhaps one of the most notable antagonists is the impending debut of the Green Goblin. Although the Osborn family has been a mainstay of the universe for years, with Harry even embracing the Venom symbiote for a time, the proper Green Goblin and the archenemy of Spider-Man has yet to appear. In this series, not only is Norman still the head of Oscorp, but he has a promising political career after securing office of mayor. Until now, he has operated by mainly manipulating political and corporate influence, but he hasn't actually gotten his hands dirty as the Goblin just yet. His son Harry, however, has gotten into the thick of the action. As we find out in Spider-Man 2, it was actually Harry who embraces the Venom symbiote in the end rather than Eddie Brock. At the end of the game though, Harry is comatose from his encounter with the symbiote and subsequent battle with the two Spider-Men. The ending has massive impacts on not just Norman, but Peter as well, as Peter announces his retirement for a time being from the role of Spider-Man in an attempt to learn from this mysterious disease and potentially help save Harry's life. In addition, Peter wants to focus his attention on the Emily May Foundation in order to save the world through more philanthropic means. Norman, however, is much more distraught at Harry's condition and begins to spiral as a result of it. In his stressed state, he prepares a program known as the G Serum, either for himself or for his son. Later, he tracks down Dr. Otto Octavius and attempts to pry the identities of the two Spider-Men out of him. Rather than caving, however, Otto Octavius revels in watching Norman struggle, and he refuses to help him. This G Serum seems to be a clear setup for the impending arrival of the Green Goblin. perhaps the most iconic of Spider-Man's villains. The comic counterpart to the G-Serum was not only responsible for Norman's enhanced strength, speed, and durability, but his mental instability as well. The serum fractured his mind and made the Goblin into his alternate personality within Norman's very mind. This piloted his body and protected Norman on several occasions. If the G-Serum does the same things to Norman, then his newfound strength, combined with his advanced Oscorp technology, primes the making of a new Goblin identity. Conversely, if he uses the serum to try to help cure Harry, Harry could be the new Goblin. Since Harry already embraced the Venom symbiote though, it seems far more likely that Insomniac will choose Norman for the identity of the Goblin. In addition to these two new villains, we saw the hints of a third, far more elusive villain being established. During the Targets Acquired series of side missions, Spider-Man is tasked with tracking down several of Kraven's mechanical birds. These ultimately lead him to a rather nondescript apartment. We learn that this apartment belongs to someone by the name of Dmitry Smerdyakov, otherwise known as Kraven's half-brother, the Chameleon. While we don't get much of the Chameleon in Spider-Man 2, we do get little hints about his backstory. In the apartment, we can find several hunting trophies, including even one of Peter's old Spider-Man masks. It soon reveals though to be somewhat of a trap, as poisonous gas begins to fill the room and Spider-Man is forced to flee. In this moment though, we can hear the voice of the Chameleon promising to Kraven that he would finish what his brother could not. This seems to indicate that the Chameleon will play a more significant role in the future of the series, and will be fueled by a personal loyalty to his half-brother Kraven. The Chameleon was not only Spider-Man's very first villain from way back in 1962, but has been due for a proper adaptation outside of the comics. He has never been used in live action or in the Insomniac series, and could make for a compelling shift in the fighting structure. Chameleon, unlike a lot of other Spider-Man villains, isn't usually the type that Spidey can outright fight fist to fist. His strength lies in the art of deception and espionage, which leads Peter to relying on his detective skills rather than brute strength and combat prowess. It is interesting to consider how this might be adapted into a gameplay format, but the Chameleon has officially been set up as one of the next Insomniac antagonists. This is all before though, considering the more drastic implications for Peter Parker in this universe and his wider responsibilities. Not only does he have a major role to play in a new foundation, but he also has interdimensional responsibilities that reveal themselves as well. We learn in Across the Spider-Verse that this version of Peter Parker is a part of the Spider Society, the multiversal squadron of protectors made up of various Spider-Men of hundreds of universes. We even hear him tell Miles that if Miguel ever comes looking for these, tell him finders keepers, which is a direct reference to Miguel O'Hara. Not only does this signify that he is in fact the same iteration, but that Miles likely knows about the Spider Society as well, at least in some capacity. Right now, we don't know how the events of Beyond the Spider-Verse will impact the Insomniac universe, or its version of Peter and Miles at all. It's possible that we might feel the ramifications in a third game, even if they're just a passing mention like what happened with Miguel here. While it's highly unlikely that this universe will be outright destroyed, it's possible that Peter will have other experiences between games, those that might affect his character, depending how big the Insomniac Spider-Man's role is in Beyond the Spider-Verse. But anyway, my friends, what do you think of the second Spider-Man game and the villains that it establishes? Do you think it lived up to the first game? And what other villains would you like to see in the future of the Insomniac franchise? Which villains did you enjoy most in the second game, and who do you want to see next? As always, my friends, hit that subscribe button to assemble and join our team, and thank you so much for watching today's video.